Thank you, Madam Speaker. And still I rise, Madam Speaker. I rise today with a heavy heart. And I say this because of the topic that I will share with persons based on a personal experience that I had. I often say I rise in the spirit of Maya Angelou. I rise with the notion that I bring the gifts our ancestors gave. I'm the dream and the hope of the slave. That doesn't apply to me personally, but generally speaking to people of my ethnicity, my race. And I rise today with this heavy heart because of something that has haunted me since I saw it many weeks ago. Something that haunted me to the extent that I returned to my office after having seen it and called it to the attention of my staff. And I've had a good deal of consternation in terms of how to respond and react to what I saw. So permit me to share this vignette with you and a bit of commentary thereafter. While visiting a local facility, a store in the area, I will not announce the name of the business. I can if I have to, but I'll choose not to today. While I was there for business purposes, I saw children come in. And these children, I'm going to guesstimate, 5 to 10. They came in the main entrance. They proceeded to move over to my left, their right as they came in. And they had bags. And they went up and down each aisle in the store collecting things. They proceeded to do this all the way through the store, traversing the entirety of the store. And when they arrived at the very last aisle in the store, they walked out. There was a peace officer, or what appeared to be a peace officer, an officer in uniform, standing there as they passed. They did not go to the cashier, the cash register, the person, the clerk who was collecting funds for items that were being purchased. They did not go there. They didn't go over to the self-check area. They merely walked out of the store with bags of goods that they collected while in the store. Now let me pause for a moment and say something that's important. I'll come back to the story, the vignette. There are things that happen that cause me to pray that the person who did this was not a person of color. When I hear of these dastardly deeds, there's something within me that says, God, I hope that's not a person of color. I don't want to have it be any person. I don't want to see dastardly deeds done. But because of the history of people of African ancestry in the country and how there was a time when there was a constant drumbeat to style them as persons who were doing dastardly deeds, I relate, and I just don't want to see that done. So I always pray that it's not a person of color. Don't want it to be a person to do it at all. So in this case, I happen to see this happen, and I have to tell you, these were all children of color. Now, an Anglo person saying this would probably be called a racist by somebody. I want you to know that I saw this, I'm saying this, and I believe that they were children of African ancestry. They walked out of that store, continuing with the vignette, and they did it slowly. They casually strolled through the door, not having paid for the goods that they collected as they walked up and down each aisle in that store. My mother would call that theft. The constabulary would call that theft. I call that theft. I saw the crime committed. I went over to the officer myself and I spoke to the officer. Did you see that? And the officer responded, truthfully, he said he did. And I made an inquiry as to why the officer did not act. And the officer was very candid. He explained to me that there had been an encounter wherein an officer or someone did act, and that person was harmed, the person who tried to stop this behavior, and that they had been told that this was not something that they would make an attempt to prohibit or prevent. I was shocked. I've heard about these things. I've seen things on televisions where large groups of people run into stores and take things and smash and grab and leave. But it's different when you actually see it yourself. But the story doesn't end here. After what I saw, I moved over to pay for what I had. And then 2 other children came in. This time, there was a child that may have been 9, 10 years old, maybe 12, hard to guess. But there was another child that was probably about a foot or more higher than my walking cane. Probably, in my opinion, 6, 7 years old. And this child had a bag and collected things. A baby, in my opinion, I would say a baby. Child. And when this child reached the exit near the officer, and I'm standing there, I saw it, this child looked at the officer, and the officer looked at the child. And I thought for a moment that the officer would react. And this child turned to that officer and stared, just stared the officer, as we would say in my neck of the woods, he stared the officer down. A baby. And then walked on out of the door with goods that he had not paid for. Friends, doesn't matter your color. At some point, we have to take a stand. This cannot be tolerated. Does anybody really think that these children are going to stop after that one incident? Does anybody really believe that they won't do things at some point in the future that will exceed petty theft? I'm only speculating, but my guess is that this can be the genesis of bad things to come. It has to be dealt with. We cannot allow people to take things that belong to other people with impunity. Doesn't matter the age. As a matter of fact, the younger the age gives me more concern than perhaps the older, because this is a point where children should be taught how to respect others and the property of others. And we now allow them to, with impunity, commit crimes. I'm calling this to our attention because I know what happens when people get hurt in the process of taking things. I know what happens. I know that there's going to be an allegation made if an officer should hurt somebody in the process. And I'm not saying that officers should. But at some point, we have to stop it. And you don't stop it by allowing it to continue. People cannot assume that they can just walk out of the store with the goods and not pay for them, especially children. And I've heard the many stories about how my son is a good boy. I was a judge before I came to Congress of a small claims court. I've heard the stories about how my son is a good boy, that he was with bad company. Well, that may be true. But good company or bad company, we have to teach our children to respect the property of others and to respect others. I'm bringing this to our attention because I have been told that this facility, this business place, may have to close its doors. That's a reason to call it to our attention. I'm bringing it to our attention because I don't want to see anybody get hurt. That's a good reason to call it to our attention. But I'm bringing it more so to our attention because I believe we have a moral imperative to help the generations that are to follow to understand how it is that they had the opportunity to walk into the front door of that establishment. It hasn't been that long ago that in my lifetime, I'd have to go to the back door if they allowed me in at all. Not that business, but a similar business. In my lifetime, I've had to go to the back door to get things that I ordered from within a business. They have to understand that people have suffered so that they have these opportunities and privileges that they have, so that there's equality under the law for them, so that they're not treated as second-class citizens and prevented from going into business places, such that they're not searched before they go into business places, such that they're not followed up and down the aisles of business places. I have been followed in places when I was much younger, simply because of who I was. They have to understand that Rosa Parks didn't go to jail so that they could steal from other people with impunity. Dr. King didn't have a march on Washington for this. We've got to get them to understand how it is that they have these opportunities. And we're failing to do it. We're failing to do it as long as there's one child who does what I saw. Doesn't take 10, just one. Every child is important, and we've got to reach them all, or at least make every effort that we can. We have a moral imperative to do this. They've got to understand this history. They've got to understand that their four parents suffered and that their lives were sacrificed so that America could be the great country it is, and so that there would be a 13th Amendment, so that there would be 14th Amendment and a 15th Amendment, end slavery, get the right to vote, equality under the law. They've got to understand. And if we're not going to do it in schools, we'll have to do it in homes. I'd prefer to see it done everywhere, to be quite honest, so that everybody understands the history and the importance of knowing who you are and how it is that you have acquired this place in society that you currently hold. We're not there yet. There's still more work to be done. We have Slavery Remembrance Day coming up in August. August 20th is Slavery Remembrance Day. There will be other things associated with our history that we will do, but we cannot allow our young generation, the youngest among us, who can comprehend, to live a life without understanding the importance of knowing who they are. So I'm going to ask persons to please become a committee of one. If you know of a child that's doing this, take it upon yourself to talk to that family or to that child. I know that there are strange things and odd things happen. Sometimes people get hurt. But if you know the family, do what we had done when I was a much younger child. You committed an offense, everybody told your mother about it. Nobody would watch a child commit a crime and not go home and call around and find out whose child it was and make sure that it was reported. We cannot do this and know that it's happening and simply go on about our business. I rise today with a heavy heart. I normally would be speaking about another topic, but this was something that has haunted me since I saw it. And as a result, I had to say what I've said. I know that somebody has been offended, but I'm sorry if I did offend you. But this cannot go unnoticed, and it cannot go without a call for change. Let's make sure that we alert the schools. Let them know what's happening. We've got to talk to people in the schools, the teachers, to get to the parents, the PTAs. I'm going to do as much as I can. I'll be a committee of one, and I ask that you become a committee of one. And yes, before I close, there are persons of other ethnicities, other races that do this as well, and we don't want them doing it. They too have a history that they ought to understand, and if they truly understand it, they wouldn't engage in this kind of behavior. So let's not allow this to happen to any child. Let's become the responsible adults who will claim all children as children in need of adult supervision at all times. And let's make a difference in the lives of these children. And still I rise in the spirit of Maya Angelou, bringing the gifts my ancestors gave, the dream and hope of the slave. I yield back the balance of my time. Madam Speaker, may I claim additional time?
The gentleman may reclaim his time.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, moving to another topic. I am proud to announce that we are going to have our Slavery Remembrance Day event in Houston, Texas on August the 19th. That is a Saturday. And I'm proud to announce it because the Honorable Bishop William Barber will be the speaker. And last year, President Biden recognized this event and in so doing issued a press release. I say he recognized the event. He actually recognized slavery remembrance, the enslaved, remembering them. And we, by way of press release, and we had this event, and we had more than 1,000 people to show up. So we are telling folk as best as we can that there's limited seating, and only 1,000 will be allowed into the venue to hear this great message and to hear us explain the history of Africans in the United States of America and the significant role that they have played in the development of the country, the role that they have played in helping this country become the economic powerhouse that it is today. They are the foundational mothers and fathers of, these are the persons of whom we will speak, persons of African ancestry who made great sacrifices and whose lives were sacrificed so that America could rest on the economic foundation that it resides on. Proud of this event for a multiplicity of reasons. One, we'll have an opportunity to expose the history that many people are not aware of. Two, we'll have an opportunity to tell people that they should not allow themselves to revere the enslaver and revile the enslaved. It's important for people to understand that concept. And we have to change the mindset. But most importantly, we will do this because those lives in the millions that were sacrificed over some 240 plus years, those lives must be commemorated. We have a moral imperative to do this. This should be on everyone's conscience agenda, a moral imperative to commemorate the lives that were sacrificed to make America great. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I yield back my time.
The gentleman yields back.